Hi, I'm Laura. My family doesn't give a damn about me, and seems it was like that from the day I was born. All kids in the kindergarten were showing their new toys, and I had nothing to reply with. I only got New Year and Christmas presents from school, thanks the sponsors. And when my little brother Duke was born, it gone from bad to worse. They just stopped noticing me. Then I decided to become a successful sportswoman, but no such luck. Mom and Dad just never agreed to buy me the equipment. I must change my life dramatically and remind them all I exist. One day I spotted an ad on the web. They were looking for girls for a new show, and even better, acting school was not necessary. That was my chance. At the casting, the assistant asked lots of questions about my parents and my brother, if I could tell them everything or not, and how often did we hang out together. I told as it was, but then I regretted it. I could screw it all up again because of being nothing to my family. The assistant called me back that exact evening. So fast. It must be a no then. What? I'm in? Are you joking? I was dizzy of happiness. I need to tell my parents and Duke. Now everything changes for us. Mom, Dad, I'll host a new show, can you imagine? I'll be famous. My parents were watching a movie and hadn't batted an eye. Could it be even this meant nothing to them? My throat clenched and I cried. The filming started. I was spending weeks in the studio, but no one at home cared. Once I was filming very late and returned home at night only to find empty pots in the kitchen. Everyone had gone to bed already. I felt too tired to cook and considered going to bed hungry, but suddenly the doorbell rang. There was a delivery guy. He said my name and gave me a huge bag. There was food from an expensive restaurant and a note from a fan inside. Wow! Sleepy Mom came out and asked to be quiet. Mom, look what a fan sent me. Help yourself. The next day another delivery guy came, this time with flowers, plush toys and a huge can of caviar. I couldn't believe my eyes. Dad took the can from me immediately. Hey, let me at least try it, it's mine. Mom whined there'd be some celebration and we'd all try it then. I was left alone and I was furious. They couldn't care less about me and my show, but now, when fans valued my work, my family immediately wanted a piece of cake, or more precisely, the whole cake. But on the other hand, that finally noticed me. I could tolerate much for this. The fans were mad. Delivery guys brought more and more gifts, even resort package tours. Wow! What next? And next, the fans came to my home. Dad, don't open the door, come on! But it was too late. My parents had announced the price of a pic with me to everyone who was interested, and there was a queue already. I'd posed for several hours, and Mom barely had time to count the money. I was exhausted. Will I have at least some part of it, I wonder? During the last filming day, I was very nervous. The director came and congratulated everyone on finishing the project, then turned to me and said, Laura, we need to tell you something. It wasn't a show, but a psychological experiment, and everyone else beside you is from a research institute. We were exploring family problems and the relationship between kids and their parents. What? I don't get it. Why haven't you told me anything? Is it even legal? To that, they brought me my signed contract with the experiment described in tiny letters. Come on, I haven't even read it. It's over 50 pages. The director added, it was even better this way. The results are more reliable. Well, after that, I had to tell them about my parents' reaction to my fame in every detail and answer a million questions. After that, the director, who turned out to be Dr. Bennett, gave me a check. Wow, it was quite a sum of money, I tell you. I came home in low spirits. I thought I'd be a star, but turned out to be a lap rabbit. When my parents learned the truth, they laughed their heads off and called me a fool. And then Duke brought the caviar, and the three of them divided it. I was hysterical and rushed to my room. No, this can't be. We are not a family. They behave as if I'm not their blood. Then it hit me. What if I checked it with a DNA test? The next morning, when everyone was asleep, I took some hairs from Mom and Dad's hairbrush and ran to a lab. In a week, the result was ready. I dropped the envelope and swayed so that a nurse had to catch me and sit me down on a sofa. It's all fine, it's just stuffy in here. I couldn't believe that all these years I was raised by strangers. But somewhere in the world there must be my real mom. 1 hour later, I was at a private detective's office already. Help me to find my real mom. I've just learned I'm not my parents' daughter by blood. Here's the DNA test. How much will your services be? The detective stared at me and said a sum double as big as I had left from the experiment. Oh no, not this. I cried in despair. The detective suddenly patted my shoulder and said he was adopted himself, so he would give me a 50% discount. Oh, thank you, Mr. Perry. A month passed, but I had no news from the detective. Had he lied to me? I must visit him immediately. How long do I have to wait? A car suddenly stopped in front of me in the street. It was the detective. He said the maternity hospital papers claimed I was born with a heart condition. What? But I've never had any heart trouble. He continued. The day I was born, there were 2 women in the ward. My mom and some Meryl Ross, who is raising my peer with a heart problem now. Wait. Do you want to tell me I was swapped in the maternity hospital? He gave me an envelope with a DNA test. I immediately spotted the line saying the probability Meryl Ross is the biological mother of Laura Coleman is 99.9%. This can't be. I wanted to leave the car, but Mr. Perry stopped me and gave me another envelope, this one with a check. The detective said he was refunding all my money because my sister needed an expensive surgery. I stared at him in total shock, unable to believe this all was really happening. So I'm standing at my real mother's porch now. I'll enter in a second and tell her everything. But what do I do next? How should I act with my parents? Help me, please. Did you like the video? Subscribe and give us a like. Support our channel. Thank you.
I woke up with a strong hunger and chills and with difficulty went to the kitchen. The refrigerator was empty, so my parents didn't have any money again. I was wondering where I could get food, and then I remembered the cellar. My mom used to keep canned food there. Going down to the basement, I caught my foot on the cans. It was strange. We never had such supplies. I turned on the light and couldn't believe my eyes. From floor to ceiling, the basement was filled with glass jars of money. Where were they from? I saw on the news yesterday that the police found a similar stash in the possession of a mobster. I would never have thought that of my mom, but my dad. Was he involved in something? My dad used to be very secretive, but lately he had completely stopped communicating with me and my mom. Not long ago, I saw him arguing with someone on the phone, and when my dad noticed me, he got very angry and slammed the door in my face. Did my dad get involved with the mafia? I pushed the bad thoughts away. He was not like that. Dad took care of me. He even got a second job so that I could buy some medicine. I had a congenital heart defect and it only got worse every day. Suddenly, the front door slammed upstairs, and I heard my mom's voice. I quickly went upstairs and immediately asked, "Where's so much money in our basement from?" But my mom was noticeably nervous and quickly told me not to touch anything there and go to bed. I was still too weak. It all sounded fake. Mom, are you and Dad hiding something from me? But she only said that she had a lot of problems, and she promised to find out about those jars with money from my dad today. And that I must have imagined it. When my mom and I had dinner in the evening, I was on pins and needles, and after eating and taking the obligatory pills, my head began to split. My mom took me upstairs, and as soon as I lay down, I fell into a deep sleep. In the morning, I was awakened by voices. My parents were arguing loudly in the kitchen. My ears were ringing, but I managed to get there. When my parents saw me in the doorway, they fell silent. My dad said they had something to tell. There was indeed a huge money of money stored in our basement, but whose money was it? It turned out that our neighbor Jack had brought the jars to the basement. Apparently, he was a fraud and dragged my parents into his scam to hide his stolen money from the authorities. But that's a crime! Did my parents not think about the fact that they could be put away? Suddenly, my mom started crying and said it was for me. Jack paid them for the basement, and thanks to him, we could buy medicine. I was ashamed that I had suspected my dad. My parents were trying their best to help me, but I didn't want them to end up behind jars because of me. I didn't want us all to end up in jail, so I decided to talk to Jack myself. I would go and tell Jack to get his damn money quickly. But if he didn't do that, I would go to the police. Mom said I was too excited and made me take my medicine again. Otherwise, I might have an episode. I dutifully drank the pills, and when my parents left on business, I immediately went to the neighbor. I went to his house and looked in the window. Jack had brought the gym bag into the kitchen, in which something rattled. The jars! That scoundrel hadn't moved everything to our basement yet? My head was spinning with anger, and I stepped back and brushed against the rake by the window. They fell with a crash. I hoped Jack didn't hear me. I looked out the window again, but there was no one in the kitchen. And then, behind me, I heard, "What are you doing here?" It was Jack. He held a huge shovel in his hands. It was too late to retreat, so I blurted out that I would turn Jack into the police. Let him leave my parents alone immediately. He said in amazement that he didn't know what I was talking about. Then he took the candy out of his pocket and handed it to me. "Here, it seems they are your favorite." Favorite? I had never eaten candy in my life. Maybe he wanted to poison me. Terrified, I backed away and ran with great effort toward the house. But Jack didn't follow me. What would that mean? At the fence, I ran into my mom. She was busy in the garden and immediately asked what happened. I shouted that Jack was dangerous and I needed to call the police right away. But Mom said she had no idea what I was talking about. What? We were just talking about money this morning. My mother looked at me with incomprehension. We were poor. We never had any money. What did she mean? I grabbed my mom's hand and dragged her down to the basement to show her the money. Inside, I could barely find a light switch. The light bulb sparked for a long time, and when it finally lit up, the basement was empty. But how? My mom looked at me sadly. Suddenly, I heard footsteps. Someone was coming towards us. It was Jack. He was getting close. The door swung open, and I saw my dad standing in the doorway. He asked me why I was in the basement again. I explained vaguely about the jars, but my dad said I was hallucinating from the new pills. And that I urgently needed to see a doctor. What? Dad, you said it was our neighbor's money. Mom, why aren't you talking? She gently took my arm and pushed me toward the exit. No, what do you want to do with me? I'm not going. Did Jack frighten my parents enough to send me to an asylum just to keep my secret? We needed to get out and run to the police. I would turn Jack into the authorities, and I would make sure my parents didn't go to jail. I ran for the door, but my dad grabbed me tightly. Let me go! I pushed him away and tried to run outside, but my mom had already blocked the front door. I needed another way. Then I ran as fast as I could to my room. Dad's footsteps could be heard somewhere below. As soon as I was in my room, I snapped the lock in one motion and rushed to the window. But if I jumped, I might lose consciousness immediately because of my weakness. I was thinking of another way to escape. But suddenly my dad jerked the doorknob and asked me softly why I had closed it. I didn't say anything. And then I heard loud bangs. They decided to break down the door. There was no way out. I climbed onto the windowsill, squeezed my eyes shut, and took a step. I landed badly. I think I hurt my ankle, but I had to hurry. Even if my parents were covering Jack, only I could tell the truth and save them. Running was heartbreaking. My vision blurred, but then I saw the police station ahead. Just a little bit left. Suddenly I heard the roar of an engine. My parents, they're after me. I kept running, trying not to look back. Then the noise of the engine stopped. What happened? At that moment, I was grabbed and dragged back. "Where are you going, daughter?" said the voice in my ear. I tried to pull away, but my strength was gone, and my parents forced me into the car. The locks on the door snapped shut. My mom held me tight all the way, and as we drove up to the house, I saw Jack in the window. He was watering the lawn near the property and stole a glance at me. I think he knew I wanted to turn him to the police. As soon as we arrived, Dad threw me into the basement and locked me in. He said it was all for my own good. I was trembling, and I tried to climb the ladder, but I didn't have the strength. And then I heard a strange voice behind the wall. I was literally paralyzed with horror. What did they want to do to me? Suddenly, several bricks popped out of the wall with a bang, and a face appeared in the opening. It was Jack. He got to me first. Now I was dead for sure. I felt like I was going to faint. I could barely stand. "Come here, don't be afraid," Jack said softly. Well, no. Then Jack reached into his pocket for something. My heart sank, but suddenly he handed me a piece of candy and said that the sweetness would certainly make me feel better. Those candies again? Jack suddenly asked if my parents had passed me candy from him. No, of course. We ate vegetables all our lives. He was very surprised, said that he had long thought the behavior of my parents was suspicious. As we drove past, he noticed my tear-stained face. And then he heard a noise in the basement. Jack knew that our houses were connected by an underground passageway, so he decided to find out what was going on. Suddenly, I heard the basement door open. It was Dad. After a moment's hesitation, Jack said that we had to run as fast as possible. We barely managed to squeeze into the narrow opening. I was too weak and Jack scooped me up in his arms. From the stale air, my head was getting blurry and I blacked out. The last thing I remembered was a thin line of light ahead. I woke up at Jack's house. Turned out he had already called the police. Mom and Dad were detained and taken to the police station. Who would have thought it would end like this? After that, a long trial began, and I did not understand what was happening. And finally, at the final meeting, I learned the truth. It turned out that all this time, my parents gave me sugar pills, not drugs, so it got worse and worse. And the money that Mom and Dad received from charity funds, they saved it for themselves and hid in the basement. Jack really had nothing to do with it. The police never found those jars of pills. But it wasn't them that bothered me. It was the fact that my closest people were using me to get rich. I couldn't believe it. As a result, my parents were put away for 10 years and I was going to be sent to an orphanage. The doctor also said that I did not have long to live because the funds could not allocate more money for treatment. Life was falling apart right before my eyes. But to my surprise, Jack decided to take custody of me, and as soon as the documents were ready, in gratitude, I decided to prepare a festive dinner for my parents' zucchini. I may not live a long life, but in the time that remains, I would very much like to repay the kindness of the man who saved me. I barely made it to my parents' garden, and Jack saw me there. He immediately rushed to help me, saying that I needed to conserve my strength. We were cutting zucchini when we saw a piece of glass under one of the bushes. What was it? Jack quickly began to dig up the flower bed, and a minute later, he was holding a jar filled to the brim with pills. Soon we dug up a dozen more of the same. I couldn't believe my eyes. This amount was enough not only for pills, but also for surgery for me. I could recover completely. My head was spinning again, but this time from happiness.